Power on.
Real-time Sovryn is go.
Ooh, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here to talk about something that I feel like I knew was coming, sooner or later. And we've talked about it in the past a little bit. But it's one of my favorite subjects. It's just not a happy part of it. And it's something that I suppose for all technologies, its day comes. And what we're going to talk about are Blu-rays, but not just Blu-rays. This includes 4Ks, which, the conversation around Blu-rays and 4Ks, like it's actually the same technology. It's just more layers, right? That always makes the conversation a little bit confusing around Blu-rays and 4Ks. But this will also apply to DVDs and really any physical disc technology. Because got some somewhat, again, not surprising. Like I said, I feel like this was coming, but some disturbing news for the future around the technology of the physical disc. But where a lot of people are talking very much doom and gloom, I'll certainly have a little bit of doom, but we're going to try and stave off the gloom on this one when we get into it. Because you know me, look, a day without a Blu-ray, like that, I don't know, is that really a day for me without watching one? Of course, I'm notorious for my ridiculous Blu-ray and DVD collection, which now numbers in, probably almost 5,000 discs at this point. I know there's another thing I get a little chuckle about is some other YouTube channels. They will, they're very much on the like reviewing of physical discs and movies and all this stuff. And I've actually had the occasion to talk with some of these people and like, this is all they do. This isn't all I do. I don't just talk about Blu-rays and movies and all that stuff, as fun as that would be. And I'm sure a lot of listeners would love it if I did. Even though I do have some movie reviews coming out very soon, including for Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim. Maybe, did I pronounce that right? I don't know. When's the last time I watched The Two Towers to make sure I got that pronounced right? Actually, we'll end up talking about that when we get to it. But regardless, I know some of these people who like their whole business model is around reviewing Blu-rays and 4Ks and DVDs, and my collection blows them out of the water. Now, am I boasting? Well, when aren't I guess. But it's really not boasting if you can back it up, and baby, this is one I can back it up. Speaking of backups, you might want to make backups of these Blu-rays and DVDs. Again, we're going to get into that. But before I can even think about popping in a Blu-ray disc, before I can really think, you know what I need? I need my cup of coffee. And something, not only that, in fact, we'll expand on this a little bit, but I need my cup of coffee. And you've heard me talk about it a few times now, but really, like my cup of coffee goes longer. And hey, the Golden Stallion is all about going longer. It goes longer when I have my little shot of Magic Mind. That's not all my little mental shot of Magic Mind does. Also hooks me up with my vitamin C, vitamin D, mushrooms, all the good stuff. All natural. And I just take that little shot, boom. And that caffeine goes longer and longer. Now, though, they also have a product for helping you go to sleep. So you have like Magic Mind Sleep. And me, now I got to say this about sleep. I can actually, and maybe it's due to my experience in the military, but I can fall asleep anywhere, anytime, on the dime. However, what I do know, thanks to my little Pixel Watch 3 here, and well, actually, it's not so little anymore. They went 45 millimeters with this stuff. Anyway, with this, I'm somewhat better aware of how long I actually sleep and what the quality of my sleep is. And that is where there is room for improvement. And that is where something like a sleep product by Magic Mind, can really change the game for you. Okay, because I'll average, 6 hours, anywhere between 6 to 7 hours of sleep, depending upon how much action is going on the night before. Excuse me. I'm talking about watching Blu-rays. Come on, get over it. Anyway, using something that will, taking something, especially, just a little shot that will help with the quality of your sleep. And we all know that the quality and consistency of your sleep is what really matters. It's not even necessarily like the raw amount of time. It's how much time are you in REM sleep, all of this. Okay. We know this score. Well, Magic Mind Sleep is here to help with that, because what they're big about, and I dig this, I like this concept of mental wealth. Okay. Not just mental health, but mental wealth. Basically, I talk about how with your diet, really, you're not just eating for the day, right? Yeah, you're eating, to get you through the day for sure. But the way that you eat 2 to 3 days previous, okay, is what's actually going to affect you that time in the future. Meaning that you're really eating for how you're going to feel 2 or 3 days in the future. Again, you're still eating for today, but what you eat today can affect you that far into the future. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, oh, I shouldn't have had all that cheese today. And you don't feel it. You don't feel the problem with the cheese on day 1, but come day 3, oh yeah, you're feeling it. Especially when you're going to the throne, you're feeling it. Okay. And this is the same deal, the concept of mental wealth. Okay. This is for your mentality, that what you're doing today for your mental health is an investment in the future, right? And that's really what Magic Mind is all about, is that mental wealth. So if you want to jump on this, you get, they call it the 24-hour pack. I dig that. You're going 24/7, baby. The 24-hour pack. Okay. You're going to get the Magic Mind Sleep. You're going to get the good old fashioned Magic Mind. You're going to get all that. Check it out. And I got a special deal for you. You go to magicmind.com/SovrynPodjan. So SOVRYNPODJAN. Jan is in January. Okay. You're going to want to get on this month. This isn't something you want to wait on. You want to get your mentality built up. You want to get that mental wealth built up. You want to start now. All right. But you're going to get 45% off with that if you use that link. Okay. So magicmind.com/SovrynPodjan. Jan is in January. Okay. SOVRYNPODJAN. Go and hit that. Get your 45% off. Get yourself some good sleep. Get yourself some better performance during the day. Get your hookup with Magic Mind. Now, you might as well put your money there, because you might not be able to buy Blu-ray players in the near future, and that's what we're here to talk about. Particularly, this story dropped, even though some of this we already knew. This story dropped at How to Geek. Okay, so howtogeek.com. I'll have the link in the show notes if you want to read it for yourself. You're going to see it in the YouTube or Spotify video. Just to the, will that be to the left of me or the right of me? Your left, as Stallone would say. But here we go. Blu-ray players will soon be almost gone. Here's what to do. Now, it's a bit of a clickbait headline, right? But there's truth in it. The truth is that LG, as of December 2024, and we're now in January 2025, they've announced that they will no longer be making Blu-ray players or 4K players. The reality is Samsung, depending upon who you ask, one of the largest, if not the largest, electronics company in the world. Really, that title goes to Panasonic, and we're going to talk about Panasonic a little bit later. But Samsung, years ago, already stopped making Blu-ray players. Now, a lot of Samsung's players, honestly, were on the lower end. You'd usually find them at Walmart. For whatever reason, Samsung has an interesting distribution deal through Walmart. You can tell when you go there. I mean, like, it's one of the retailers where you can actually buy, speaking of smartwatches, you can get like a Galaxy Ultra there. Which is just kind of, it's just sort of a funny thing, right? Because when you think of Walmart, right, I think a lot of people instantly think lower rent. And for Samsung to have, basically their whole product line there, this is the funny thing, is that most people don't realize, everybody's like, oh, Apple, that's the premier product. That's the high end. No, actually, Samsung products in general cost more than Apple products. Well, maybe not so much in general, but they have the most expensive smartphones. And I'm not just talking about foldables. Okay. even, a high-end Galaxy Ultra phone, whatever, that's 24 or whatever, costs more than an iPhone. So, I mean, the funny thing is, if you're like basing somebody's wealth upon the expensiveness of the product that they carry, actually Samsung would be the real shower of, shall we say, monetary wealth, not that mental wealth, not like Magic Man was talking about. But anyway, that monetary wealth. But yet their like main distributor is very much Walmart. Now, granted, Apple's even done deals with Walmart, of course, has for a very long time. So, it's not as odd, but I think just people don't always realize that there are more expensive computer products than Apple. But that's besides the point. Maybe actually kind of speaks to the point, because also in 2024, I do believe was the year that Apple also stopped selling its own disk drive, right? They had the Super Drive, which they had been doing the Super Drive in various formats for honestly over 20 years. But that stopped getting produced as well. Likely the Super Drive stopped getting produced probably because Samsung also stopped producing physical disc players. Because, Apple doesn't make the lasers, right? So this all speaks to kind of a larger trend going on. Okay, so we have LG that has dropped out of the Blu-ray player game. And again, real quick, Blu-ray 4K, the technology, it's all Blu-rays. It's just how many layers does it have? Does it have 1, 2, 3, or 4? Or was it 1, 2, and 3, right? Maybe Blu-ray, what is it, BDXL? I forget if that's actually 3 layers or 4 layers, or maybe it's both. But regardless, when we say Blu-ray, we're also talking about 4K in this sense. I generally just say Blu-ray because honestly, like, I don't do 4K. I have some 4Ks. They stay, I don't use them though, right? I just get them because I want the Blu-ray disc that generally also comes with them. Anyway, so we have, again, we have Samsung, we have LG. They've both dropped. They're done with Blu-rays. What companies are still making them? And then we're going to speak about this in a larger context. Sony is still making them, of course, which is not a surprise. Why? Because they fucking developed the technology. like Blu-ray is theirs to win. Or theirs to own. They own it. Remember the format wars? I do. I survived those, along with Afghanistan and Iraq, but I don't know, the format wars might have been worse. Anyway, Sony is still making Blu-ray players. Panasonic is also still making Blu-ray players, though they haven't made a new model in years. And you may say, well, wait a minute, wasn't there a new high-end Panasonic 4K player that came out in America or in the United States in 2024? You're right, but that was also a 2-year-old European model that just got rebranded. It's not actually a new Blu-ray player at all. So as far as we can see, even though Sony and Panasonic are still producing, manufacturing Blu-ray players and getting them out to retail, they're not actually developing any new technologies within that. And I wonder about this for a few reasons. There's so many places that this conversation could go. But the reality is that, yes, and I think I mentioned this before, the, 4K, that's the end of the road. One of the reasons I never wanted to get into 4K discs was I'm just tired of rebuying movies all over again. I get so sick of that, and when you've been buying since I was a kid, a teenager anyway, buying VHS tapes, then buying DVD, which of course made a ton of sense, but then, you had the aforementioned format wars. It's like, well, do I get an HD DVD or do I get a Blu-ray, right? And, some people have gone through 3 or 4 or 5 different formats, at this point. And it's like, well, I'm done. I don't want to do 4K. And, so the idea would be that, well, I got to stop somewhere, because after 4K, what is it going to be? 8K discs? Is it going to be 10K discs, 12K discs? No, those aren't going to happen. 4K is the end of the road for physical formatted disc, for movies. And I suppose there's a bit of confidence you can feel in that 4K is the top of the line. That doesn't mean that there isn't going to be 8K content. Yes, on streaming and whatever else, even though it's just going to rack up your Comcast bill, on streaming and whatever else, sure, there's going to be 8K content. There may be content that somehow goes beyond that. There are 8K televisions. There are, like this technology, yes, they're going to keep bumping up the resolution and, and so on. But as far as physical discs, 4K is the end of the road. There's not going to be another format. And there were people who had been saying that for years. And I think this lack of production by some of the largest electronics companies in the world, of the players themselves to do this job, to be able to play 4K discs on your TV, I think it proves the point. It's not theory anymore. This 4K really is the end. Okay, so if you did decide that you want to invest in 4K discs, again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time explaining why I don't, but if you did, then you can feel pretty confident there's nothing else that you're going to be buying in the future, unless there's some kind of dramatic, world-changing, event that occurs to where like the internet is no longer a thing and the streaming is really no longer a thing and everything does go back to, having to play stuff as local copies, local backups. So, but I don't see that happening. Like I've always told you, we're not heading toward sticks and stones. We're heading toward the sprawl, William Gibson sprawl. So anyway, what to do about this? Like I said, you can feel good about like that investing in 4K movies and TV shows, even though those are a little more rare. You can feel good that that's kind of the end of the road. You're not going to have to buy these movies again unless, they come out with, say, new versions in 4K, which of course happens all the time, right? I mean, part of the reason that I buy some 4K releases, again, like I said, is not because I'm going to use the 4K. I don't even have a 4K player. All right. I do it to get the Blu-ray that benefits often enough from the new, usually director approved scan that was done for the 4K, but that ends up on the Blu-ray. All right, so you can get an improved release of a Blu-ray through, generally by buying the 4K. Now, of course, if they release the new scan Blu-ray version on its own without the 4K, I'll just get that. Okay, but sometimes you end up having to get the 4K for it and whatever. I mean, and there's a whole other conversation to have around that because it's like most 4K releases come with the Blu-ray as well. Sometimes they even come with the DVD as well. I mean, it just shows how inexpensive this technology is, which is partly mind-blowing as to why it's falling away. Now, I get that it's falling away because most people are doing streaming. Do people even really watch movies anymore? Like that's a serious question to ask. Okay. But when it's such an inexpensive technology and it's a technology that lasts compared to the incredible expense that Netflix and Google with YouTube and whatever else, pays to stream so many terabytes, petabytes, honestly, of data, okay, to your home, petabytes over so many years. Okay. That's far more expensive than to produce a disc and just have it play locally. I mean, it's really, and that's not even getting into, the environmental aspects of that. And look, hey, as far as the environmental aspects go, I get it. Okay. Like I really get it. It's like the one plastic thing that I do keep acquiring. And because in my own life, I try to acquire as little plastic as I can, as little new plastic, and even old plastic as I can. And, because microplastics are a real thing, I don't even think conservatives argue about that one. Like that's a reality, This isn't climate change or shit like that, where you're like, oh, I don't know, is it, but are humans causing it or blah, blah. No. Humans are causing microplastics and they're out there and it's real. Like, I don't think there's an argument around that one. You tell me in the comments on YouTube or on Spotify if somehow there is. Believe me, I want to know. Like, I'd love to hear these arguments that microplastics aren't real. Anyway, so, I feel in one sense, I feel bad, okay, about buying a bunch of, plastic discs and whatever, and including the cases and whatever else, even though I don't really care about the cases. I put them all in binders. Okay, in one sense I feel bad about that, but then in the same sense it's actually a far more sustainable way of transmitting media than honestly the internet is. I mean, thankfully Microsoft's not heating up the oceans anymore with underwater servers, but I think you get my point. So, even in that sense, it's a pity that this technology is, and the concept really of physical discs is dying out. Now, do you need to go out and, buy like 20 Blu-ray players right now? No. I mean, the other beautiful thing, and Sony really made sure of this, is that in general, Blu-ray discs particularly, not so much DVDs, but Blu-ray discs are such a long-lasting and durable format. They did that by design. And also, the hardware that plays them often is incredibly durable. Now, a little bit of a different story if we're talking about Blu-ray writers. I have gone through, I can't think of, maybe in as long as Blu-ray has existed, I've gone through, I don't know, maybe 2 Blu-ray players that have failed arguably from use. That's over the entire span of Blu-ray's existence. Okay. And that's not even counting my PS3, which we'll talk about that. But Blu-ray writers, like disk drives for computers. Oh man, I've gone through 6, 7 of those in a span, honestly, of 10 years. I've gone through so many of those. I mean, because I burn them out. I'm not running a business here, but maybe I should. Maybe I should run a Blu-ray business of some kind, because I am copying and making custom DVDs and Blu-rays, all the time. My computer is always busy rocking that stuff. And if you ever want me to do an episode talking about what software I use and how I go through that process, just drop me a comment, okay, in YouTube or Spotify, and maybe I'll get to that in the near future, because talk about something I could talk about forever. Because this is something I've been doing forever. Back when Netflix was a DVD mailing service, I've just been ripping discs for eons. So, okay, and burning them and making custom ones and whatever else. All right. So your Blu-ray player, my point in all of this is that your average Blu-ray player is going to last you a very long time. Like a decade or more. It's really good, especially if you bought a Sony. Those things are so rock solid. Okay, that's going to last you a good long while. When you look at, say, Panasonic, I haven't bought a Panasonic player in a long time, so I can't really speak to that. I know there were some issues with previous Panasonic 4K players that they had some kind of issue. But again, I've never ever had a problem with Sony players. That's usually the way that I go. Okay. So, maybe you want to buy one other, get and they're not expensive right now. We're talking, around the $100 range, sub 100, 120, around there. Okay. For a good solid Sony Blu-ray player. 4K players, you're looking more at the $200 range, depending on what you're getting here. Okay, but get yourself a good quality one, and then just buy one more. I don't think you need to buy 4 or 5. Just buy one more, and that second one, your first one and the second one will probably last you as long as those discs themselves will last you. And depending upon if you plan on living forever like me, or, if you're expecting to pass at some point in the future, these players will probably last longer than you. So, but what if you do plan on living forever? What do you do then? Okay, well, before I get into that, another side subject is, consoles, gaming consoles, right? Like the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 5, or even, some series of Xbox. Can also play Blu-rays, DVD, 4K. All right. By the way, DVD players don't seem to be going anywhere, and part of the reason for that is DVDs are still most people don't know this, DVDs still comprise over 50% of the sales of physical discs for movies. They blow the other two formats out of the water. And that's because around the world, it's still very popular. And part of the reason it's so popular is because it's a pretty fairly open standard that basically any company anywhere can make stuff without having to pay a license fee to Sony or whatever, even though, JVC and whoever else, developed the DVD or whatever. It's a pretty open standard. And if you're especially buying stuff from a country that doesn't care about intellectual property, I mean, you won't have a problem here. Okay. So DVDs are not really part of this conversation. It's more about 4Ks and Blu-rays. DVDs they're just not going anywhere. Okay. But gaming consoles. So gaming consoles can play 4Ks and can play, Blu-rays and DVDs. Now, fortunately, these gaming consoles generally have a very long support cycle, support life cycle, right? Like the PlayStation 3, far and away the best physical disc player for Blu-ray and DVD, not 4K, but the other two. Just far and away the best due to the cell processor and the upscaling that it does and so on. And its repairability, which is well documented. That's still technically supported by Sony, even though Sony tried to stop. They tried to stop supporting it along with the Vita, and, the market said, no, fuck you, no. You're going to support this thing. So, having a gaming console, like, that's one of the safest bets to make sure that you have a physical disc player that will be supported for many years to come. Okay, so that's something to consider. And, these even used PS4s, and I'm sure in the future used PS5s, are always going to be a part of the program. So that's, an investment you might want to think about as well. That said, okay, will there be companies, little, like Chinese companies and whatever else, that will make, quote unquote, pirate Blu-ray players and whatever else? Of course. Okay. So even if somehow Sony and Panasonic also dropped out of, Blu-ray player production, there's always going to be some little company with some weird ass name that is going to make these things. So that's why I say, really, like, yeah, it sounds like doom, and it is doom for the format, that eventually the discs themselves just won't get made. But for the players, there's always going to be players. I mean, you can still buy VCRs. VHS tapes still get made of new movies, believe it or not. Like it's not going anywhere. In fact, even Mrs. Sovryn, it's a different format, but Mrs. Sovryn was like, yeah, I want to get into audio cassettes again. And I was readily able to find, like a little Walkman style device that still does audio cassettes and frankly so much more. It can do MP3s, all kinds of things. And so that's the thing. Like, none of these technologies really completely go away. They just become very niche. And in one sense, this is where I want to dispel the gloom, because in one sense, I like that. I like it when it becomes very niche. Okay, because then the people that have it are people that have the passion, right? The passion for movies and whatever else they happen to be into. Okay, so, and then consider also that who is the largest Blu-ray producer in the world right now? That's Walmart. Like, as far as the companies that actually, like burn the discs and get them out to retail, Walmart owns the lion's share of that business. They're not stopping anytime soon. They bought the company that did most of the, Blu-ray movie production in 2023. Why would they have done that if this was something they didn't plan on, having out there for a very long time? They know. Again, it's okay if it becomes more niche. Okay. But I really, like, it's not going to go away anytime soon. And there's so many re-releases still to do on 4K. And again, like I said earlier, Blu-ray discs, standard Blu-ray discs, always benefit from that, or almost always benefit even from 4K technology, which is part of the reason that I love, as much as I despise 4Ks, I also love them just because they validate and allow for new productions in the physical disc space that I love, even if I don't go above Blu-rays, right? So there's that. Now, the other part that you can do is Blu-rays are, as far as a technology, not just for movies, but as far as a technology, and we've talked about this for years on Sovryn Tech, as far as a technology that, gets used for, say, data storage in general, not movies, not TV shows, nothing like that, but just data storage, is still widely used across Silicon Valley and around the world. The number one purchaser of Blu-ray discs is none other than Meta, right? Facebook. They store, like, you think you deleted your account. Nope. They probably just schlepped you off onto a Blu-ray in one of their storehouses, and it stays there for whenever they need it, and they go find the label. And it'd be hilarious if there was some guy in a warehouse who's actually like marking all of these things. Oh, Brian Sovryn, in black marker on the Blu-ray disc. That'd be how apropos. But anyway, Blu-rays, the technology itself, not just on a consumer level, is still widely used, and it's not going to go anywhere. Why? Because just like I was talking about the environmental thing earlier, it's actually cheaper and less resource intensive overall to store to put cold storage, long-term storage onto Blu-ray discs than it is to have some server with hard drives, just holding on to all this stuff and powered up all the time. It just makes sense. And even the biggest companies in the world, the tech giants, know this. So the technology is not going anywhere. Okay. So that said, what are the devices that will burn these Blu-rays for Meta and Facebook or whatever? Well, it's things that connect to computers, right? And you'll always, in my opinion, you'll always be able to get your hands on those Blu-ray writers, which by default are Blu-ray readers, are always going to be a thing. Apple dropped out of it, but it's just, that's not their business. And also they don't need to produce it. Other companies will. Asus even, once you get into the PC disk drive space, okay, there's all kinds of companies making this stuff that aren't stopping anytime soon. Okay. Yeah. They're not necessarily innovating in the space either, but they don't need to. What they need is something rock solid that, can burn an ass ton of disks. Now, again, I blow through those. So if you're going to go the PC route, do you want to get at least 2 or 3 of those? Oh, at least, for sure. If you plan on writing your own, which you might want to do that. Why? Because the other part of this that you can do, granted, you could rely on hard drives, right? Because you can make backups of your Blu-rays and DVDs. And if you're on a computer, you can play them in whatever software you happen to have. Now, you want to be pretty particular in what software you end up using for that. For example, I've tried pretty much, from Power DVD to, now I can't think of it. There's a Chinese one, Leiwu, maybe it was called. I've tried most of the, Blu-ray playing software on Windows PCs, and Linux. You kind of have to forget it. Not exactly. You can do make MKV to, like, in real time get rid of the piracy protection, but be a pirate, folks, please. I don't want protection from that. That's the point. But regardless, most of these players do not do a good job at all. And often enough, not only do they do a terrible job, say, like in the menu, which uses Java for Blu-rays, which is part of the reason that it's so complex, but also, like, the latest piracy protections, copyright protections that are built into the discs, will screw up. Like, you're always going to end up with like one new disc, and it'll be months, maybe even years until you get an update that could actually play a particular disc. Okay. So that's going to be a problem. This is certainly an area, not to say that all Blu-ray players are perfect on this, and certainly their updates are few and far between as well for licenses, but they in general do a better job of that. Your best bet is to actually, there's a company, so any DVD used to be the thing, of course, with, Red Fox, and they went out of business. I don't know if there's been any updates on that. I haven't looked into it in a while because I haven't needed to. Okay. But you want on-the-fly decryption of piracy protection on discs, because then you can just play Blu-rays on VLC player and it can play it no problem. Okay. Can't really speak to 4Ks, but at the very least, Blu-rays play beautifully in VLC if you get rid of the piracy protection. Okay, and you can do this in real time with software like X Reveal, and that's literally just the letter X and then Reveal, Reveal. I love this software. It's basically any DVD, but it's updated, a little more open. It's really solid stuff and worth every penny. I pay for it, and gladly, because it's great for when I want to make copies of discs, but it's also great for when I just want to play a disc on a PC. And even if I want to do it, say, in VR, like, it just works really, really solid for that. Okay. So not that it's X Reveal's not the player. X Reveal just gets rid of the copy protection. Okay. And the main reason that I get into this, though, isn't so much to be able to play the discs on PC, but I do want to be able to do backups at times. And that's another valid way of doing this, is basically you could make, especially if you're talking about 4Ks, you're going to need so many hard drives, but you could just make copies, make ISO images of all the discs that you have, and, keep them that way and be able to play them regardless of players or whatever, because all you need is just Blu-ray software or X Reveal or something like that. Actually, at that point, once you get rid of the copy protection, you don't even need X Reveal. You can just play all of these things in VLC, and you'll be able to do for probably decades to come. Okay. So, that's another way of solving this problem. And there's other valid reasons that you may want to go that route, because a lot of, particularly DVDs, not so much Blu-rays, but particularly DVDs, and we're not talking about scratches on the disc. We're talking about failures in the burning process. And there are a lot of or what I would consider to be popular series, or at least used to be, that have fallen to this. For example, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, classic show from the 90s. Never got a Blu-ray release, probably will never get a 4K release. Only came out on DVD, and those DVDs themselves are in fact rare, but part of the reason that they're rare is that the discs themselves have failed in a very short period of time due to a failure at a particular Warner Brothers DVD burning processing center. Years ago, decades ago. And there are others that have the same problem. It's disc rot, yes, but these started, disc rot comes for all discs, but there's some that their burning process was not as efficacious as it could have been, and they have failed significantly quicker than other discs. Look, I have DVDs that are 20 years old, and I was told DVDs weren't going to be able, even professionally pressed DVDs were not going to last longer than 10 years. That's not true. I have DVD copies that are 20 years old that are still going today, no problem. Okay. And DVD copies were, those aren't professionally pressed. Those are supposed to only go 5 years. Well, that's not true. Okay. So there's something to be said for the quality of the disc. That's important. Okay. But some of these things, especially the ones that are on the order of 20 years, yeah, I've made a copy of them. I have them backed up on my NAS. Okay. Now, granted, my NAS, has an insane amount of terabytes on it. All right. But that's what you need to, really consider this. But, in the future, if hard drive space gets less and less, or, gets less and less expensive over time, would I consider going full on where I just have ISO images of everything I own? That would be such an expensive proposition to do, to say nothing the amount of time it would take. Okay. But would I do it? Oh, sure I would. Hell yes. Give me those backups. Get rid of that piracy protection, all of it. I am on board for that. But, for people with smaller collections, that could be a very viable thing to do. But ultimately, all of this said, yes, physical discs are going away. They are fading away. They are dying. They might become a niche thing like vinyl. I think they're really already kind of at that stage. Okay, minus DVDs. And notice when you go to Walmart, how much of the movies, it's 80% DVDs, and then the other 10 and 10 is 4Ks and Blu-rays, right? As far as what's available there. All right. I'm sure Walmart has no problem with that. They know their audience. Okay. But will Blu-rays and 4Ks, will this effectively just become like vinyl? Yeah. And again, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. That's fine, because the more niche something gets, again, the more passion gets put into it. Look at the vinyl releases that come out today. They're fucking gorgeous. I'm not even a collector in that way, okay? I'm an MP3 guy through and through. But even the CD sets and the vinyl sets that come out now are stunning. They're almost as beautiful as the music on them. And, if 4K and Blu-ray and all that, like if that becomes that kind of a product, which is the way that we're going, I don't think it's really going to die completely, at least not for many, many decades yet. Okay. That's okay. So really, yeah, we don't need any of the gloom. And honestly, we don't really need the doom either, because you can always back up this stuff. As long as computers exist, you're not going to lose the stuff. If computers don't exist, you're fucked anyway, right? If we live in a world without computers, kind of hard to believe that a lot of the movies that we like to enjoy are going to survive into that world. All right, that's not happening if we're going into Planet of the Apes. Maybe I should do a review of Planet of the Apes stuff. That would be fun to talk about. Actually, you know what? Planet of the Apes. Let me talk about this for a second. Because one of the reasons I don't want this to go anywhere is that same passion. Mrs. Sovryn and I, we were actually rewatching the Planet of the... This is the first time for her, for some of them, the many, many, many millionth of times for me, okay? But, Fox put out a really nice Blu-ray package of the original, well, actually it was all of the Planet of the Apes films up to that point. But they put together a great package, it has the first 5 movies, has the 2001 and whatever, okay? And in the original films, like, they put in this custom intro by the lawgiver from Battle for the Planet of the Apes, where he, like, tells a little story and whatever, right when you put the disc in. Before you get to anything, before you get to the menu, the lawgiver starts speaking to you. It's so cool. And when you start the movie, there's an introduction given to you by this CGI version of the lawgiver. And it's just that, again, that passion and that fidelity to the series and loyalty to the series is it's so beautiful to see. Not only that, but you get multiple versions of particularly Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which might be the best movie in the series next to the first one. And Battle for the Planet of the Apes, where I saw versions of these movies that I have never seen before in my life, and they made them so much better. I need to do an episode on this to review those, because there's so much to talk about with those films. Those films are play better today than they ever did. Okay. But, if you're just watching them on Amazon Prime or some streaming service, or even if you're torrenting them, you don't get these multiple versions. Good luck even if you get to find them. Okay, you sure as fuck not getting the very fun, very cool introductions, both for the disc and the movie, by the lawgiver, that somehow Fox decided that was a good idea. Clearly it was before Disney bought them. If anything's scary about things, like Disney's releases are atrocities in how bare bones they are with their own catalog. So it's kind of terrifying that they own so many other studios now that were once rivals, who clearly, did physical discs right. But again, Disney... I don't know. No, I do know, and it's just not good. Regardless, these are the things that we miss. Because when somebody actually takes the time, it's not just like, oh, schlep this shit off, put it on a server and get it out to people who care about it, and then remove it in 2 months so that they can't see it again, create false scarcity and license fees and all this other crap. Okay, keep them subscribed, keep them hooked, blah, blah, blah. All right, physical discs solved that whole problem. And it's always there in perpetuity, okay? Nobody has to pay a license. It's not like Netflix where they have to pay a license fee to be able to play this movie for however long, or they go for a tax write-off and take the shit down. You own it. It's yours. You get all the wonderful special features, sometimes whole other versions of a movie that actually make the movie incredibly richer, especially Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Look up about that if you've never seen it. Holy shit. What a masterpiece. And Conquest, beyond that, far beyond that as far as masterpiece goes. Just incredible. But these are the things that we're going to miss if these things actually did die. But like I said, fortunately, they're not really going to. It's going to be okay. You're always going to be able to get access to them in some form or fashion. And if we have to start backing all this shit up ourselves, we will. There's plenty of crazy people out there just like me. And I take comfort in that. And I hope you do too. So there we go. Now, if you want to start on your journey of jumping onto physical discs, I just want to remind you, you might you really might want to grab some Magic Mind, okay? So that mental wealth is ready to go to help you get all this stuff. And if you do, again, just hit that link, magicmind.com/SovrynPodjan, SOVRYNPODJAN, to get that 45% off. Link is in the show notes if you want to just do it that way, make it easy for you. And with that, I will see all of you on the other side, even on the other side of the Disc Wars. Wait, that's a Tron game. All right, that's it. I'll see you on the other side. Woo!